Thank you for inviting me here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Speaking about war for me is the ultimate evidence that something is inherently broken, disintegrated at the level of our mind, of our heart, and our body. The art in life is about integrating rather than separating. And oftentimes integrating things that apparently seem very much at the opposite end of the spectrum. And it's about balancing three intelligences that we have: the mind, what we think and say; the heart, how we feel and connect; and our hands, our will, choices, and actions we make. I've seen in my work over decades that the lack of alignment among these three different intelligences is ultimately the major root of dysfunction at all levels, at the individual, organizational, and societal level, creating separation, creating fragmentation, creating polarization, and ultimately incoherence in the system. So regardless of the reason, location, and size, war is the deepest sign of a crisis at societal, relational, individual level that gets reflected in the way and patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. And intellectually, it keeps us hostage to the past of outdated structures that no longer serve society and nor the economy. And ultimately is a sign of disconnection from one another and from who we really are, inflicting pain over generations. And finally, it is also a lack of exercising free will in saying no and consciously choosing new possibilities to evolve. So since the biblical account of Cain and Abel, as told in Genesis, human history has witnessed a countless number of conflicts that have shaped human history and psyche. And all these countless conflicts have been driven out by ideology, religion differences, territorial or sovereignty disputes, power and resources struggles. War is a world business machine built on fear and the mindset of scarcity. War ultimately is driven out of money and the power over others, over God. Wars keep mobilized an incredible number of resources on a global scale that could be redirected towards higher and more noble intents. And the proportion of the costs are mind-blowing. Billions and trillions of dollars finance war every year, while humanity suffers from underinvestment in areas that are truly essential to our survival. According to the CPRI data, just last year, military budgets rose by almost 4% to $2.2 trillion. If we just zoom into Europe, Europe increased its budget by almost 15%, faster than any other region. Growth particularly pronounced by countries nearest to Russia, of course. In that context, arms makers are rejoicing for the best year ever, as war in Ukraine has triggered a boom in Europe's defense industry. Winning governments contracts for munitions worth billions to supply airborne vehicles, drones, tanks, and armaments of all sorts. But if you imagine just a tiny fraction of that military budget significantly contribute to many of the challenges of the entire planet. For example, reducing military spending by just 2% would end global hunger by 2030, as stated by the World Bank, United Nations, and the WFP. Something within 15% of the global military budget and more, still to be determined, could have significant contribution in addressing climate change, according to several scientists. So it is incredible to see that all the attention is diverted towards war and all the budget is spent there, where a tiny fraction of it could actually make our lives much, much better in all senses. But war is so much imbued in the fabric of our society that we've grown used to accept it as a necessary part of our own evolution, as a self-individuation throughout history. But until it is far away from us, it doesn't touch personally, it's okay. The moment that it gets closer, then we are drawn into a spiral of suffering and pass this sacrificial ritual onto others and the next generations to come. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, approaching their 20s, whom I love with all my heart, and they are the greatest gift ever I've received, for which I'm most grateful every morning I wake up to be alive and be in service for as a father. Were we born in Russia or Ukraine, my son, who was 19, and I would be sent to war to fight someone else, a brother to someone, a father, a son, a grandson, just because he wears a different color uniform or stands in a different part of the land, a land we ultimately don't even own, as is the other way around. The land owns us. My son is a beautiful man with a wide smile, smart, witty, and sweet, and shows already some positive evidences of the future human being we wish humanity to evolve into. He's studying physics, and he's fascinated by quantum physics. And who knows, maybe one day he may become an enlightened entrepreneur, helping reverse climate change or contribute in other ways to the evolution of human species. The worst thought ever I can ever engage with is that my son may die before me. That dreadful thought would just shatter my entire life and that of my family and friends. War is the most dreadful nightmare we can have. A few years ago, I had a dream during the pandemic. In that dream, I could see shadows of other beings for the shape they could belong to other civilization. And as I asked myself what skills were needed to access this level of civilization, and the answer came to the speed of light: alchemy. And meditating on the word alchemy, I knew it had to be with alchemy as the ability to transmute fear into love, and particularly the ability to transform weapons, metal used for weapons, into gold, resources, to cultivate a new world waiting to flourish. So I'm going back to this notion of fear and love. And what do we choose between fear and love? Fear and love actually are the 2 primary emotions that we all have. All the emotions we experience as humans somehow fall in a spectrum. Love and fear as defined as the absence of love. All human emotions fall within these spectrums, as nuances represent the energy frequency between these 2 poles. And we have the ability to move along this spectrum. And it just needs to turn up or down a dial to increase or decrease the volume of love we pour into the system, to compensate fear with love. So a response to any situation is ultimately a choice of love. An intentional choice soars to some degree from fear to love. And I believe that the ultimate purpose of leadership is not that of achieving or conquering more power. It's actually to reduce fear and uncertainty. If that is true, it implies, in essence, to amplify the volume of love into the system and transmuting fear into love. War is a sign of a deep crisis at societal, personal, spiritual level. And the most horrendous nightmare, spiritual nightmare, I could say, from which we can awaken by remembering. When we remember who we really are, what we are here for, and who we choose to be and become together, is when we can consciously choose and make a shift. It is vital to reflect upon these huge questions, who we really are and what we're here for. If we want to shift the paradigm of violence and war that has so much penetrating throughout the fabric of our society. If we take a longer view beyond time and space, we may see ourselves being more than just human beings. We may see ourselves as souls, embodied souls, on a journey, on an adventure, traveling across many lifetimes, on a mission of exploration to complete some aspects that we're missing and expand our individual awareness and then our species consciousness, co-participating in a world reality in co-creation with the cosmos. Seen from this perspective, we are all one, moving together through all lifetimes, experiencing several aspects that we need to learn from. And we've probably been all possible combinations. At some point in our history, we've been every single race, every gender, every religion, every nationality, and every class. And we might equally have experienced being rich and poor, or one another parents, or children, or sibling, or soul friend. If we allow this picture to sink in, we realize that war is a pain we're inflicting on our very self. We are fighting one another, but we are fighting our very self, different parts of our own self we have been or will be at some point. And how we'll live this planet is how we'll find it in the next iterations. So expand our ability to hold paradoxes and feel empathy and responsibility to other, and choose to include and integrate rather than separate. This is a very courageous choice to make. And for me, the choice starts with self, starts with connect with our heart, and engaging in a dialogue with our own self on a journey that moves from the head to the heart to the hand. It starts with silence. It starts with making a pause to enter into a much deeper place where we can get the answers, where we can get guidance. And from that place, we can activate a new dialogue for humanity, informed by that silence and sourced out of love.